Hello, everybody. I'm a little bit early because this crazy, I don't know if it was the internet. I don't know. I don't know what was happening, but it was not letting me go live. So I'm here anyway. Let me go ahead and share this with everybody else. Okay. Just a second. I normally would have time to have shared this before, uh, but it's weird. Anyway, my lovelies, welcome to the Gentleman Psychic. I am your host, Richard Lale. Richard Lale is one name, not two. I have to go back over here, and it was very curious. I don't understand why. It was saying that it couldn't save the video. So I have to, let me see, share it, copy the link. And go over here, and then we go over here. Normally, I like to go ahead and normally I like to go ahead and have it already shared, and then I can just come on and I can talk. Oh, and my art is falling off the walls. It's, I was harried. Let me go ahead and I'll go quickly live over here on the Book of Faces. You put book simple. Yes, because I'll go into why. I've had a lot of glitches. I had it all written out. I had the name of the book, and I had the description, and I had story time, and I had all of the tags that I normally do. And 10 times I tried to go live, and it would say, your video is not saved. Try it again in 5 seconds. And then it would say, you can't go live. And then I would try it again. And then so I did that for the last 15 minutes. I've been trying to get it to go on. Anyway, let me just go ahead and paste over here. So yes, it says book. Yes, it's simple. No, it is not my typical thing. But again, it's because there was a weird glitch in the internet, and now I am back. Let me just post it. Go live. Join me live for story time. It was a weird glitch in the matrix. I tried all manner of ways to get it to work, and it just would not. And I was getting a little panicked, but I got it fixed. Hello, Melissa. Hello, Christy. Hello, Lemon Juice. Hello, Mary Jane. Hello, for those of you who are with me but not on screen. Anyway, we have a few minutes. So if you have not had a chance, go get your stuffy, get your princess, get your babies, get your bears, get your dolls, get your toys, get your loved ones, get a blanket, get a fan, get something to drink, pick your poison. We are going to finish reading tonight the Devil's Mansion, and then we start a new book, and I will tell you about that in just a few minutes. A little bit of an update. Again, I apologize for the abruptness of this. I was trying to get it scheduled for the right time, and it just would not work. So I panicked and I said, okay, I'm just going to go live. We'll fill the space until it comes time. Hello, Kelly. Good evening. Yes, it has been quite chaotic. So I got back from Atlanta. We'll talk about that. It was lovely. Lord Constantine was lovely. We hosted this event. It was successful. The event itself broke even, which is brilliant for a new event, a new venue, a new party. So that was great. We didn't break even ourselves, but together we didn't owe other people. So that meant that we broke even, and that was a good thing. I have this funny issue, though, when I drive a car, is that I fall asleep very quickly. So I have to, this is maybe magic for you. So I have to sit up really nice and tall, and I hold the steering wheel like this, because otherwise modern cars make you drive like this, and it makes you slouch and it makes you fall asleep. So I have to sit up real tall, and then I put my feet out and I flex them up like this, and I breathe into the nose and out the mouth, put the car on autopilot. Is that the word, autopilot? I don't know. So we have a little treat for you tonight. So we are going to Mr. Satan is fine. I didn't take Mr. Satan. I actually rented a car. Mr. Satan, I do not take him any further than maybe 20 minutes, an hour if I'm feeling lucky. I'm usually not feeling lucky. Oh, that is the time. Oh, it's early. It is early. We still have 6 minutes. So if you have not gotten something to drink, time to go get something to drink, time to hydrate your vocal cords. I know I will be having a little, I picked my poison, but it's not in a fancy bottle, I'm afraid, not tonight, because I was running out of time. You may notice something strange too, slightly different, is that I am in the room where I do my readings, and I do, reading tarot, reading cards, doing seances, and not in my other chair. This is the one that you oftentimes will see on Wednesday nights when I do Witches Movie Coven with Patty Negri, Heather Green, Jason Mankey, Courtney Buckley. That is because I have to move the table from here to there. And it is easier for me to just have one setup because it's a lot of work. Anyway, I'm going to move you ever so closer to me so that we can be a little more intimate. I don't like this white wall, but it's here. Anyway, I don't like that my pictures are all falling off the wall and that one is missing. I'll move my chair over a little bit. We can work on the adjustments later. Anyway, so I have a special treat for you tonight, my devilish darlings. We are going to change up the storyline just a little. We are going to finish tonight. We have, oh goodness, how many chapters do we have going? 1, 2, 3. 3 very short chapters for the end of the book. It's going to end, that is certain. I was going to give a little nod, but it's going to end, that is for certain. And then would you rather hear what we're going to read next tonight, or would you rather wait until I just finish this book? Go ahead and type it in the comments what you'd rather. Would you like to know right now, or would you like to know after we finish this book in about 20 minutes? Let me know, because I love this next book. It is newer than we normally go for, but it is a fabulous book. Christy Cragen says, finish the book first. Anybody else want to vote? There's no right or wrong answer. After, that's 2. Okay. Then I will announce the book as soon as I'm finished with this book, The Devil's Mansion. For those of you who find yourselves, by the way, in New Orleans, you can find me. I will be in the French Quarter reading. I'm at Apothecary, and I've got a few other places that I'm Apothecary, and then we do potions, and there's a few other things that I'm working. Also, you can find me in person, and if you would like a reading from me, I am giving an offer, a very special offer of a donation of a certain amount. Anyway, you can find me at thegentlemanpsychic.com. You can send me a Facebook message, which is probably the best way to reach me. I get overwhelmed with emails, so Facebook message is probably best. Anyway, my lovelies, let's see what time it is. We have a couple of minutes. I think we can go ahead and begin right now. Ms. Whiskey, hi, sir, again, with my little crazy stories of how hard I try to catch every live of yours. Now I'm in Roma, and there's an hour difference from Romania. The live at home started at 4 a.m. and here. Wow. Well, thank you so much, my dear. Thank you for being up at the wee hours of the vampire morning. That's very lovely. This is going to be a very fast one because we only have 3 very short chapters. We tried to finish it last week. I mean, the week before last, we just didn't have time. And then last week, I was in Atlanta and I did not get to go. It's starting at 3 a.m. And when the live finishes now, I need to wake up to go to the airport, but I'm still going to be here with you on live. Again, as I always say, so glad that I'm here. I am glad that you are here too, my love. Okay. I will take a little drink to hydrate the vocal cords. When I was away in Atlanta, I came down with a little bit of something. I don't know what. As the French say, I don't know what. Let's see. Let me go right back over here for just 1 second. We'll turn that one off, and then we will let that one go, and then we'll read. We have about 30 seconds, and of course the clock is going to go, and that just sort of kicks off the hour. I think it's quite befitting. I don't have the timer to, the countdown. Otherwise, we could do a New Year's countdown, but I don't have that. So we'll just wait for the clock to play itself out. Good evening, Mr. John Maxwell. Gracious good evening to you. Sorry for the silence. There we go. If you cannot stay awake, do not fear, my dear. I just love to know that you are here when you are, and you may, of course, listen to me on playback. Thank you, Matt. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, boils and ghouls, guys and gals, and non-binary pals, without further ado, we complete The Devil's Mansion. Chapter 22. The bellboy had not been certain. The mysterious lady had told her driver to go to the docks. Blair was speeding down to them, anyway, on the chance the boy had heard correctly. This time, he had a definite name that Janet was traveling under, that she might have sailed under. He could not understand how she could stay with Maurice when it would have been so easy for her to get away. Maurice could not be with her all the time. Why had she made that trip to the docks on Friday? Probably, he conjectured, to secure passage for herself and Maurice for some place. But why hadn't she left him then? Why hadn't she run away? Could she be sticking to the bargain she must have made with him at the big house near Beau's Vein? It was incredible to Blair Rodman that she was in deathly fear of Maurice. He was certain. But could she get away? The bellboy had said she took only the heavy leather box with her and had returned with it. At the docks, he found no one by the name of Miss Marie Bordeaux had sailed on Saturday, the date for which she must have had her passage. He eagerly scanned all the lists for that day, but without any success. The harbor master in charge, in return for the generous-sized bill Blair handed him, was very helpful. But all this availed nothing. "What's this?" Blair inquired casually as his eyes lighted on the name Wanderer, reading over the list of ships. A private yacht owned by Caspar Abel of Vancouver went out Saturday afternoon for a trip around the world. Was Mr. Abel aboard? No, I believe not. He leased the yacht for a year to somebody with a lot of money. At least I heard rumors that he did. Do you keep passenger list of yachts? No. We have nothing to do with them. I only know this ship was cleared to leave the port Saturday. How much of crew does it carry? About 25, I think. Big boat. One of the nicest here. Mr. Abel has been waiting to sell it for some time, though. I suppose he thought he might as well get a charter money for her as let her lie idle in the harbor. He helped Blair find the men who had loaded the Wanderer. They knew nothing of the new lessee, except the only passenger they had seen aboard her was a woman dressed in tan and heavily veiled. After she went aboard the Wanderer, sailed immediately. Mr. Abel had been there to see her off. Blair, after some difficulty, got hold of Abel on the phone. Yes, he said he had chartered the Wanderer for a year to Miss Marie Bordeaux. She had insisted that there be no public announcement of the deal. She had called him Friday morning about the yacht. The rental fee, Abel said, was $20,000, which had been paid to him in gold when he went to the woman's suite at Vancouver Hotel Saturday morning. She was a very beautiful girl with light hair and violet eyes. She did not say much. He did most of the talking, telling her about the ship and showing her pictures of it. She said she was going for a long trip for her health. She demanded that the yacht be completely equipped for long cruise by 4 o'clock that afternoon. He had said that it was almost impossible, but when she insisted, he had tried his best and succeeded in having everything ship-shape on schedule time. He had seen her off. Yes, she was alone. He had no idea where she was going, but he got the impression it was the world cruise. He had needed the money and had not inquired too closely into Miss Bordeaux's plans. "Are you sure she was alone?" Blair asked again. "Positive. There was no man with her?" "No, I personally took her to the stateroom. She asked to have some of her luggage put in another stateroom adjoining hers. Then she bade me good-bye and raised her veil a little. I think there were tears in her eyes at my interview with her, to be unhappy." "Is there a wireless aboard the Wanderer?" "Yes. It is fully equipped with everything. Oh, another thing. I asked if she had given any orders to the captain, and she said no. Would I tell him to head out through the straits, and when the ship was out at sea, she would give him further orders. I did this, of course, just before I left the yacht." "Who is the captain?" "O'Malley, a Vancouver man." Blair held the receiver in his hand a long time after Abel had hung up. "He was in a telephone booth on the docks. Janet on the Pacific, hopeless now to try to find her. 5 days she had been sailing. At last he left the docks and re-entered his car. He might, he thought, charter a boat and follow the Wanderer. He might, but where? Where had the yacht gone? It might be months before he found trace of the boat. Even Abel didn't know its destination. It might not touch any port for days, and then it might be thousands of miles away at some small harbor where it would not be reported. Damn it! Why hadn't he thought of that before? O'Malley, the captain, was a Vancouver man. He might have a family here. Blair jerked his car to the stop before a drugstore and soon found a street address of Captain Angus O'Malley in a new directory. He was not listed in the telephone book. The address was quite far out, and it was half an hour before he found it. An old-fashioned house with a sign, "Rooms for Rent," hanging crookedly from a post on the front porch. If O'Malley's wife was at home, she might be able to tell him the course of the Wanderer. The captain might have known it, even if Abel did not. At his ring, a middle-aged lady, stout and smiling, answering the door. Yes, she was Mrs. O'Malley. Blair stated his errand as quickly as possible. Did Captain O'Malley tell her where the Wanderer was going? Mrs. O'Malley shook her head. I only know he is to be gone a year, she said. I was at the boat to see him off, and I know that at the time he had received no orders where to go. He is to write me the first port they enter, and he will, too, because he's the best husband a woman ever had. She drew herself up proudly. And you haven't heard anything yet? No, probably will be some time. The Wanderer may head for Zanzibar or China, or I don't know. O'Malley's getting good pay this trip. One moment, my energy saver got turned on because my battery got low, and I thought this was plugged in, but it was not. There we go. Okay. And you haven't heard anything yet? No, probably will be some time. The Wanderer may head to Zanzibar or China, or I don't know. O'Malley getting good pay for this. It was a hurry call he got from Mr. Abel to get to the yacht. He's Mr. Abel's regular captain, but he takes other jobs in port. If he hadn't happened to have reconditioning the yacht in time, they'd never have gotten ready as quickly as they did. O'Malley had just been home from Alaska for a few weeks before he got this call. I understand he's to be gone for the year this time. I'll sure miss him. Would you phone me at Vancouver Hotel? Rodman gave her one of his cards. It's Captain O'Malley. I'm anxious to get in touch with someone aboard the Wanderer. If I change addresses, I'll let you know. Mrs. O'Malley promised, and Rodman returned to the hotel. Another sleepless night ahead, a night when he would think of nothing but Janet. Oh, Janet. Oh, Brad. And how he could find her, a night when he would make plans, only discard them in the morning when the light of day showed him how absurd they were. He walked by the clerk's desk, but he stopped by a sudden call. A telephone message for you, Mr. Rodman, the clerk said. Just came a minute or so ago. A Mrs. O'Malley. Without waiting to hear more, Rodman dashed for the door, leaving the astounded clerk convinced he had suddenly lost his mind. Rodman dashed to the car and leaped in, bound for Mrs. O'Malley's home again. He violated dozens of traffic rules in his wild ride and drew up the curb in the front of the old house within 20 minutes. Oh, Mr. Rodman, the woman greeted him when she came to the door. My, how fast you got here. I just this minute got back from next door where I was phoning you. Of course, I stopped to talk for a second, but then you told me to call if I heard anything from O'Malley. Well, no sooner had you gone than a special delivery letter came. It's from Seattle. And the queerest letter. Oh, on my word, I'm worried about O'Malley. I never did get such a letter before. Maybe you'd like to read it. Seeing you are interested in the Wanderer, too. I declare. She took the letter from her apron pocket and handed it to him. Her habitual smile was gone from her face now. Indeed, her features were quite grave, and she looked worried. Blair took the letter and glanced at it quickly. Dear Grace, here we are in Seattle, laid up for repairs, only for a day though, and I don't know how we're going to make it that quick. Engines damaged, though I don't know how. And me a captain, unless one of the boys jammed them up because he wanted to get off the ship. 10 of the boys jumped ship as soon as we made port, and I don't know whether the rest will stay or not. Damned funny ship. Gives me the creeps, too. What with getting together a new crew and nobody wanting to join up with us because the rumors got round. And fixing the engines. I'm busy, but not too busy to drop a line as I promised. Mr. Abel told me there was only a woman aboard, Miss Bordeaux, but there's another passenger too, a man, though none of us have seen him yet. The boys call him a ghost man, and they're pretty scared. Outside the straits 2 days ago, I married Miss Bordeaux to the ghost man. She, pale as a flower, and him I never did see, though I heard him plain enough, answering my questions. She fainted dead away after the ceremony. So she didn't like it much either, this ghost man. He gave me orders as soon as we started to sail, though, as I said, I never saw him. I can't be too hard on the boys, because I know how they feel. I feel the same. Only I can't quit. So long now. I gotta get to work. If I don't get a crew together by tonight, we gotta sail without a crew. God help me. Say some prayers for me. Grace, because I need 'em. Love, your Angus. I'm that worried, Mr. Rodman. Seems like I ought to phone Mr. Abel. Let's see the envelope. Tried to make out the date on the postmark, but it was blurred. The letter itself was not dated. I'm leaving right away for Seattle, Mrs. O'Malley. The Wanderer may still be there. Thank God. Without waiting to say goodbye to the woman, without even stopping to pick up his hat from the hall table, Blair raced to his car, started the engine, and was down the street before Mrs. O'Malley had the time to get to the door. The clock on the dash showed 7 o'clock. 4 hours to get to Seattle if he had luck. At the border, he paced the ground nervously, pulling out his watch and putting it back in his pocket, while officials examined his car. 5 minutes he had to wait. There seemed hours to him. 5 minutes lost, and he was in such a hurry. Blaine, then Bellingham, once he got off the road, and lost 15 minutes before he found the right highway again. Once he had to stop for gas and oil, and this too seemed wasted time to him. Everett. Then in 20 minutes, Seattle. When he saw the miles of the waterfront and the docks built along it, as far as he could see the lights of the ships twinkling all over the bay, his heart sank within him. How could he ever find the Wanderer here, when he did not know where to look? It might take him hours to find the yacht. It might already be gone. Chapter 23. 3 o'clock in the morning. Although he had asked every place on the waterfront, Blair Rodman had found no trace of the Wanderer. He was at Smith's Cove now, and suddenly realized he was very hungry. His last meal had been a sandwich in Vancouver. Seeing an all-night restaurant nearby, he went in and warily climbed up on a stool at the counter. His head throbbed a little. The bandage had been off for a day, but the wound still ached a bit when he was tired. The restaurant was at the end of a long pier, and a sleepy waiter shambled up at last to see what he would have. The food was greasy and poorly cooked, but Blair bolted it down nevertheless. Hungry as he was, it didn't taste so badly. Drinking his second cup of coffee, he called the waiter to him again. Is there a yacht round here laid up for repairs? The Wanderer, the waiter. Stifling a yawn, perked up at the question. Why, yes. I heard that name tonight sometime. Whom? One of the boys from the ship was in here eating. Is the boat in the harbor now? I couldn't say. Only now I heard a guy talking about it fierce ship, and he said, is the man around now? I couldn't say. Blair was exasperated and showed his impatience. I've been hunting that yacht since midnight. I'll pay you well if you can tell me anything about it, or know where I can find the man who talked to you. At the mention of money, the waiter awakened completely. Man's name is Charlie. Why don't you try across the street at the Flop House? He asked me at dinner where he could find some corn, and I told him. Blair handed the waiter a $10 bill and hurried from the restaurant. There was a lodging house across the street, a tall, top-heavy frame building set back off the street and approached by a shaky wooden runway. The place, he saw, was set on piles. A light was burning on the lower floor. He entered, finding himself in a big room furnished with rickety chairs and well supplied with cuspidors. The room was unoccupied, and after a moment, seeing a bell on the desk, he walked over and rang it several times. A man with a green shade over his eyes appeared at the back of the desk. "What do you want?" "I'm looking for someone," Blair answered. This man came slowly to the desk. He was fat, and his small eyes looked at his visitor suspiciously. Blair laughed at his concern. "I'm not a prohibition officer, don't worry. I'm looking for a man named Charlie, a man who was aboard the Wanderer, a yacht in the harbor somewhere for repairs." "I don't know him." Sighing, Blair pulled a bill from his pocket and placed it on the counter. "You don't know him?" I might. Now that I think back, he's a young feller with sandy hair, ain't he?" "I don't know. I've never seen him." "What you want him for?" I want to take him I want him to take me out to the ship, or if he doesn't want to do that, to point it out to me." The man took the bill, carefully put it in his greasy wallet, and then opened a little gate in the counter. "Charlie's in here." Blair followed the man through the door. At first he could see nothing, as the room was cloudy with smoke. Finally he made out a group of men sitting at a table, evidently playing poker. Blue, red, and white chips were piled in little stacks in front of each man. In a corner, several other men sat around a table, a bottle of whiskey in the center. "Charlie," the fat man bawled. The youth at the corner table waved his hand, and Blair walked toward him. "You?" "Yeah, what do you want?" Blair saw the boy's eyes blurred, and the muscles of his face sagged. Very apparently, he had had too much to drink. "You on the Wanderer?" The boy looked frightened. "Who are you? You're not going to take me back to that." No, no, no. "But I want your help. I'm trying to find the girl aboard, and I don't know what the yacht looks like, nor where it is. If you tell me all you know about it and point it out to me, there'll be something in it for you." "How much?" Charlie asked, leering cunningly. Charlie was not so drunk he didn't know what he was doing. "How much do you want?" $10. "Come out here then." Blair started towards the door, and Charlie, smelling ready cash, followed him somewhat unsteadily. Blair breathed more freely in the air again. The smoke and the cheap liquor fumes in the room had nearly choked him. I ran away from the ship," Charlie informed him. "Couldn't stand it no longer. And say, you won't tell me, will you? Will you promise? You won't tell on me, will you? Promise?" Blair promised. I say, promise again." Impatiently, Blair promised again. Time was passing rapidly, and Charlie was taking his time telling him what he knew. You know what? I jammed up that engine. Yes, I did. And I'm damn glad I did. If I hadn't, God knows been off that ship. We'd been dead somewheres in the Pacific, dropped a file in the engine. That shows how bad I wanted to get off that ship. Say, she's a crazy ship, or maybe, had a hell of a time doing the damage, but I done her. And I'd do it again if I got on such a rig again. "Where is the Wanderer now?" But Charlie ignored the question. "Yeah, I'd do her again. I seen some things on board that ship that was the devil's doing. I just had to get off, and the other boys too. Only me, I had the nerve, and they didn't. But they suspect, I guess, that I done the trick. So soon as they anchored in the harbor, and we'd had the devil of a time getting in, I jumped over and swum to shore. Some of the others did too. I was hired as a waiter and to help in the galley, and seen enough. Gal, she's pretty one, and I liked her. Always so gentle, so kind, so kind of sad. She didn't like the ship neither, but she had to stay, I guess, poor thing. First time I seen her, I liked her. sitting all alone in that stateroom. But the other stateroom where he was, him that had only a voice, God, now I used a shiver when I went in there with his meals. You forgot me coffee, he says to me. And I can't see him, I tell you. I can't see him. God, I was scared to bring back the coffee. And I went to the Captain O'Malley and told him what I heard. And he says to fetch him the coffee. The cap, he said, he looks kind of serious like too. So I bring back the coffee and left it on the table. Then the voice says, that'll be all. You can come back in an hour and clear away the dishes. And I am come back in an hour and everything was et up. Christ, and me a God-fearing man. That was dinner the first day, and then all the other days was the same, me trembling in me boots, for fear I'd hear a voice in there, in the stateroom next to the gals, and oft times hearing it, never seeing the guy, but hearing him talk at my elbow. Wonder I ain't got a head full of white hair, but the worst was when they was married, that pretty gal and that ghost man with only a voice. I could see the captain didn't want to do it. He was nervous as a cat and dropped his book. I was a witness, and I was that scared I ain't never going to get over it. The gal saying I do in a small voice, the ghost man saying I do in a big voice. But we don't see him. Captain picking up his ring from the table and putting it on the gal's hand, a ring full of stones, and a gal fainting dead away, me rushing for water and smelling salts. Where is the wanderer now? Again, Charlie ignored Blair's question. His head was in his hands, and his eyes were staring straight ahead. There was a look of fear in his honest blue eyes. That's the night I drop off the file. The gal, she never came out on deck at all. And when I took her breakfast to her in the morning after she was hooked up to that ghost, she didn't want nothing. Just asked for a drink of water. I never did see such a pale face, and with yeller hair falling on her pillow. She looked swell. She was purty. Can I get can I get a lunch around here? Suppose so. Are you going to give me that 50? Blair gave him the bill and thanked him for his information. You say you want a lunch? Yes. Well, I guess I can try to find one for you. Wait here. Charlie vanished in the darkness, still a little unsteady, but running nevertheless. He came back in about 15 minutes. Blair heard him calling from the water below the pier. Got a small one, Charlie said. Paying $1 an hour. How to wake up a guy. Say, you know what? Guess I'll go out with you. You're a good skate, and I'd like to see that gal get off that there hell ship. He waited while Blair clambered down into the boat, and then swung a small boat around and headed toward the yacht full speed. The waters were dark beneath them. Ahead was a slender outline of the Wanderer. She's going out, I'm sure. We gotta hurry. A slight spray was hitting Blair's face, and the salt water stung his eyes as the boat, low in the water, plowed swiftly toward the vessel. Chapter 24. Charlie was right. The Wanderer was getting up steam. When the launch neared her, the two men could hear the engines turning. Better turn off the power, Blair warned. They might hear us. We can row to her. They can't hear nothing. The engines is turning. However, Charlie did turn off the power, and they floated to the side of the Wanderer. Blair blessed the dark. Otherwise, the launch might have been seen. How can we make it up to the side? Blair whispered softly to Charlie. Leave it to me and hand me that rope. Blair obeyed, and Charlie, curling the end into a lariat, with a mighty swing of his arm, threw the line, a soft thud, and Blair saw it around the rail post. Charlie made it fast to the launch. Then, light as a cat, the youth climbed the rope. Blair waited until he was up before he started. It was harder climbing for the older man. He had not tried to shinny up a rope since his boyhood. However, he made it slowly. And when the rail led himself gently to the deck, the gal's stateroom is A on the port side. B is right next to it. You'd better go ahead. I'm getting scared. Blair took his revolver out of his pocket and held it tightly in his hand. Then he stepped ahead on his tiptoes. When he had walked to the prow, he looked back for Charlie. He had not heard the boy coming after him. Yes, there he was, at his elbow. A. The letter danced in front of his eyes when he saw it, shiny brass against the white door. Janet was in there. Blair's heart leaped when he turned again to Charlie. Is there another entrance? Yeah, one from the saloon and one from the stateroom B. Putting his hand on the brass knob, Blair found the door to stateroom A. From the deck deck locked. Better try the saloon. Charlie led the way. The saloon was dark. Taking Blair by the hand, he drew him through the room, and before Blair knew it, his hand touching cold metal, a doorknob. This too would not turn. It must be locked from the inside. Hell, we're sailing! He heard Charlie hiss behind him. True, the yacht was moving. The window in the deck. This might be open. Blair, half stumbling over a chair, turned to leave it, getting lighter. The dawn was breaking. He could see dimly the objects in the saloon. In a few moments, the two were on deck again, and Blair was standing under the window of stateroom A. It was open a crack. Unfastening the shutters, he peered into the stateroom. Someone was lying on the bed. Janet, it must be Janet. If you could get her out and down the rope while the yacht was moving slowly, they could get into the launch and be away. But if the yacht were to speed up, he lurched against the window. The wanderer was speeding up. Janet! Damn it! Janet! He called softly, so softly he hardly heard his own voice. Janet! The figure on the bed rose. Janet, looking toward the window, her eyes opened wide, staring at him. It's I, Blair. Pushing open the window, he leaped into the stateroom, and Janet was in his arms, her face pressed close to his. He was kissing her lips, her eyes, her hair. I've a launch outside. It may be dangerous, but we can try it. Who's there? A voice demanded. Blair, his arms still around Janet, looked around. The voice seemed at his side. Janet covered her face and started to moan. Who's there? Came the question again. Blair looked bewildered at Janet. Where was the voice coming from? Her eyes met his, and then moved to the door, which was just a few feet from where they were standing. The door evidently leading to stateroom B. Gently taking his arm from the girl, Blair's fingers tightened around the revolver, and tiptoeing to the door, he flung it open and stepped in. There was a scream, and then silence. The light switch was near the door, so snapping it on, Blair looked at the thing on the floor, the thing that had screamed and then fallen at his feet. Recoiling a little, he knelt for a moment. A man? God! Maurice Bosvain? Was this he? The love child of Morelia Bosvain? The child of Morelia and Maurice Creel? The head of a man, yes. The head bristling with hair like Morelia Bosvain's, only more vivid, more brilliant. Hair such as Blair had never seen before, coarse, almost like bristles. A head as big as his own. The features were not badly formed, except that the face seemed evil, horrible, the mouth twisted, the lips blush in hue. A face that might have been handsome if it did not carry so much hate, so much vengeance in its expression. Wide open eyes were staring at him, green eyes, small, with reddish brown above them, which met in straight line over the sensitive nose, glassy green, nearly all pupil. Glassy green eyes, nearly all pupil. But the body, Blair shuddered as he looked at it. That body. It could not be more than 2.5 feet in height, strongly built regardless of stature. The limbs were wiry but muscular. The small hands were clenched, the muscles of the arms knotted, but the skin was the worst of all. It was greenish cast, like that of a reptilian. He was full of fine scales. It was only the face of Maurice that had any resemblance to a man. Nature here seemed to be kinder, for there were no scales, no greenish tinge. The body, if it could be called a body, was clad in a red velvet robe, a robe that might have fitted a small child. Green slippers were on the feet. One had fallen off, and Blair saw that bare foot had hard hoof like that of an animal. He put his hand on the wrist of the creature at his feet. The scales were harsh and rough to his touch. Maurice had fallen when he had come in, screamed and fallen. He might have fainted, but no, there was no pulse, nothing to indicate the man was alive. Although the greenish eyes were open, hesitating for a moment, Blair closed his eyes. Maurice was dead. Probably of fright, he thought, he who had been so fearless in the dark. Glancing around the room, Blair noticed a well-bound leather box with straps for carrying in the side were two small apertures. Perhaps this was the way Maurice had entered the boat, unseen by the crew, as luggage. Perhaps this was the way he had traveled, afraid that anyone would see him. Closing the door behind him, Rodman was in stateroom A. He's dead, Janet. He must have died of heart failure when I came in. The girl clung to Blair and put shaking arms around his neck. Oh, darling, it was so terrible, she kept murmuring. We'll go now. I'll call the captain and tell him to stop. Blair gently put Janet on the bed and reached for the phone. Yes, O'Malley was willing to stop, glad to, in fact, if the fiend in stateroom B was dead, as Mr. Rodman had said. I never really saw him in there. Maurice, I mean, Janet was saying. He told me I would never see him, but twice he kissed me at night. It was too awful. Twice I saw his face in Miss Bosvain's crystal. Even that was terrible. He's dead, Janet. Darling, don't worry any more. But Blair, he fitted into a leather box. I nearly died, but I got into that car at Miss Bosvain's, the car that took us to Vancouver. I thought I was alone at first until I heard him talk and discovered he was in the box. I broke a string of diamonds he gave me and threw them out. It was the only thing I could think of. Did you find them? Yes, that's how I finally came here. And Blair at the hotel, he used to come into my room at night after dark and talk to me. He could see better in the dark, he said, than in the light, but I could not see him. Here on the ship, he spent hours at night with me sitting on that stool and pointed to a small footstool on the floor, telling me how much he loved me. Then those awful kisses. He made Captain O'Malley marry us. In here, Maurice was in the next room, but he could throw his voice in any place. That's what used to frighten me the most, because at first I thought he was right beside me. Then I realized he was not, that he only had the power of throwing his voice. He used to tell me he loved me because he could not mold my mind to his. You see, he gave me all the orders, and then was never so could hear me repeat them. He was near, so he could hear me repeat them. I don't know what he would have done if he had tried to escape or disobey him. He's dead, dear, and the Wanderer has stopped. Shall we go? Yes, but what shall we do with his things? His money? He has that trunk full of it, and the jewels he gave me. Every night when he came in, I would find one on the bed the next morning, some jewel, a ring, a necklace, something. Rightfully they would be yours, wouldn't they? No, let's take them to Nita. She stood for so much from him. While Janet was gathering her things, Blair looked around the stateroom. It was luxuriously furnished, but the mirrors there were many of them, were all opaque. Maurice painted them with something the first night. I heard him, Janet said. He did the same in the hotel in Vancouver. There was a little silence, and Janet began again. Blair, one night he read to me some poems of Shelley's. In the hotel, it was dark as pitch. In the room, another time he acted out a whole play for me. Here, if I had not been so frightened, I would have marveled at it. In half an hour, Janet and Blair were in the big launch which belonged to the Wanderer. Janet's luggage and Maurice's belongings beside them. Charlie was in the small boat, waving to them happily. Maurice told me, Blair, that before he met me, he hated everyone, even his mother, for he blamed her for all his troubles, although he did not tell me what they were. He said he did not know then what love meant, and that through me he would be regenerated. Captain O'Malley is going to take him out to sea and bury him, Janet. It's the best, I think. And we're not going to lose any time getting back to New York. Are you quite sure he's dead, Blair? Janet asked, as she snuggled up to him. Quite. Shall we be married here in Seattle now, as soon as we land? Why, I guess so. Blair kissed her upturned lips and patted her golden hair. The end. Good evening, Lauren, Morgan Richards. Hello, Sandy Orloff. The sound is cutting off. Oh, goodness. Mike Pope. Hello, Sandy Orloff. I like the sound of the clock. Yes, you do. Okay, we have 20 minutes. That gives me an idea, actually. Because I was going to read this other book. It's a short book. We'll do this one. And then we'll do next week, we'll do something. If we don't finish, we won't finish this tonight. We'll finish this one, and then we'll do something a little bit more Halloween theme. Okay, so the reason that we're going to do this next book is because it is A Rocket to the Morgue. This is actually a little bit newer than I like. It is 1940, goodness. I believe it's 1941. There's a reason that I'm going to be doing this book. And in order to tell you why I'm reading this book, I have to tell you, in order to tell you the book, I have to tell you why I'm reading it. So I did a seance back in Pasadena, and it was a group of people that I barely knew. They were acquaintances. Aletha, good evening. Anyway, so I was back in Pasadena giving a seance. They didn't have anyone that they wanted. They just said, anybody, anyone, anyone. So we did the seance, we raised the veil, and I never put my fingers on the Ouija board because I don't want to be accused of manipulation. So we said, is there anyone here? Yes, the board said. Who would like to talk? And the board spells out JP. The woman to my right says, JP Morgan? And I said, no, I know this. I know this energy. I know who it is because I've dealt with him before. This is Jack Parsons. Jack Parsons lived right down the street from me. I said, hello, Jack. How do we know that this is you, Jack? And Jack spelled out CRJ9K. And I said, I have no idea what that means. That is a bunch of gobbledygook to me. I have no idea what that is. So the fellow across from me, he says, CRJ9K. Couldn't it be like CRJ9000? And if so, it sounds kind of like a jet propulsion. Couldn't that be an engine? And I said, not a rocket scientist. Possibly it is. I don't know. So I said, okay, Jack, who do you want to talk to? Who do you want to talk to here? And he spells out H.H. Holmes. And the woman on my right said, the serial killer? And I said, well, no, yes, H.H. Holmes is the serial killer, but I played H.H. Holmes twice on television. I played that serial killer twice. Once in a music video and once for Elevator. I said, okay, Jack, thank you. We know who you want to talk to. What do you want to tell me? What wisdom do you have for me? And he spells out BOOK. Now, we closed out the séance. I said, I get it. I'm supposed to write a book. So we close out that séance. And when the séance is closed out, I look for CRJ 9000. And that is, in fact, a jet propulsion engine. And I said, okay, that's very interesting, Jack. Now what? So I looked up Jack Parsons' book, H. Holmes, and I came up with this 1941 noir classic. It is called Rocket to the Morgue. And without giving any of the plot line away, I will tell you there is one special thing that they end up by meeting these writers, these young writers who are futurists in the 1940s. They write for the future. They belong to a group that was a real group of writers in the 40s. It was disbanded during the war, but there was a young group of writers who went by the Manana Society because they wrote stories for the future, but also because they would come in and they would say, I have a great idea for a book. I have a great idea for a book. I have a great idea for a book. And they would go, oh, yeah? When are you going to write it? Manana? So it was Jack Parsons' way of laughing at me from beyond the grave, telling me, oh, yeah, you've got a book. When are you going to write it? Tomorrow? You're going to write that book tomorrow? How about tomorrow? You're going to write that book tomorrow? You're going to write that book tomorrow? So without further ado, we will go ahead and read this book. And I will tell you, I'm not going to tell you anything about it. I'm not going to tell you anything about that book. I'm not going to tell you anything about the book that I am writing. But yes, many years later, I am writing a book. It is, I'm not going to tell you what it's about, but I'm going to tell you it is a magic book. That's all I can say. I'm not going to tell you anything more. You will have to buy the book. So, Jack, wherever you are, I'll point down. Jack, wherever you are, this book is for you. Now, Rocket to the Morgue. It's a very fragile book. These are, they were dime store books. They were not very good. I mean, they're not meant, the binding is not good. The book is good, but the binding is not good because they were meant to be thrown away. Anyway. Rocket to the Morgue. Thursday, October 30th. The first day. Leona Marshall stretched her long legs out on the bed and clasped her hands comfortably behind her head. Isn't it nice I couldn't nurse her? She murmured. Think how awkward it would be for you to take over a feeding. Her husband took the bottle from the electric warmer and tested the milk on the inside of his wrist. Handy-like, he agreed. He seemed satisfied with the milk and wrapped the bottle in a cloth. Then he lifted his 3-month-old daughter from her bassinet and held her up high. The two beamed fatuously and gloriously at each other. No games, Leona warned him. She has to learn that mealtimes are strictly business. We aren't playing games, Terence Marshall protested unconvincingly, settling his daughter into the crook of his arm and tenderly poking her plump stomach. No, Leona's voice was suspicious. No. You know what, Leona? This is a fat little wench you've got here. Think she'll ever grow up to have her mother's figure? Such as it is now? Leona surveyed herself ruefully. It'll do. Come on, darling. Open up. Open up your mouth. This is milk. Nice milk. You remember? The pink little lips parted reluctantly, then clasped avidly on the rubber nipple. Anything interesting happen today? Leona wondered. The baby, released the nipple, and turned her head vaguely toward the voice. The father said, "Damn it, Leona. If I'm going to take feeding, you might as at least let me give it them in peace." "But did anything?" "Here, darling. Nice nipple." "Oh, nothing special. Just a murderer." "Just a murder?" No." He cut his wife off hastily before she could speak. "Nothing up your alley. And why a lieutenant on homicide should be cursed with a wife who loves mystery novels is one example of the ways of God to man that Milton forgot to justify. Nothing at all pretty about this one. No locked room, no mysterious weapons, no unbreakable alibis. The last mainly because we haven't even seen a suspect yet." "Still," said Leona. "All right. If you'll stay, husband, I'll tell you. I'll tell you about it. She doesn't mind my talking, see? It kind of lulls her. No, this was a bum in a Main Street rooming house, a floater. Name, according to the register, was Jonathan Tarbell. Nothing on him to check that one way or another. Been there a fortnight, according to the clerk. Just slept there. Never around the daytime. Just one visitor, one who called a couple of times. Description too vague to help. Shot through the heart at close range. 35 automatic. Weapon smartly, if extravagantly. Left right beside the body. No prints, which, together with the man's bare hands, rules out suicide. Somebody, presumably the murderer, had searched the room, but hadn't bothered to take over $300 in cash. So it happens like this. Tarbell's clothes were new and fairly good, and he had plenty of cash, far too much for a man living in the lower depths. The murderer wanted something in the room, but no money. So in all likelihood, Tarbell was tied up with some kind of racket, blackmail at a guess, pushed it off too far, and got taken care of. That much is clear. And the obvious next step. "Aren't you ever going to burp her?" Leona asked. "Now look, if I don't tell you about what I'm doing, you plague me with questions. If I do, you try to tell me, you start interrupting me. And go ahead and burp her, dear." "All right." "And don't forget the burp cloth. We can't have your suit. We can't go having your suit cleaned every day." "All right." "And anyway, I hadn't forgotten it." Lieutenant Marshall spread the diaper over his shoulder and hoisted his daughter up. "The trouble with you, madam," he went on, patting the infant's rump, "is that you haven't any real interest in crime itself. All you care about is the fancy frills and the furbelows of romanticization that the whodunit writers trick it out in. Crime itself is essentially flat, dull, drab, and infinitely important." He spoke in the grave, rotund tone into which his usual colloquialism occasionally lapsed, and his daughter answered him with a burp equally grave and even more rotund. "I know," Leona chortled. "She's going to grow up to be a critic." Marshall grinned at the baby. "Let's throw your mother a bone, huh?" With his face, with his free hand, he fished out of his pocket a string of beads and a scrap of paper and tossed them over to the bed. "See what you make of those while we finish dinner." "Clues. Leona cried gleefully. "No, Ursula." Marshall resolutely turned to his daughter's face away from her mother. "You can play with clues when you're a big girl. Right now, you drink your milk." "She took the whole bottle," he announced proudly 10 minutes later. "You can talk. Where did you find these? Is she wet?" To the second question, "What do you think?" To the first, that bit of paper was in among the unstolen currency. The rosary had slipped down through a hole in the lining of his pocket. Indicates the body was searched by an amateur. always beware of torn linings. And those two items were soul damned leads we've got to go on. Leona looked at the two letters and the 5 figures scrawled on the paper, a phone number and a rotary. I suppose you've checked the number. It was an apartment hotel out on Rossmoor near Wiltshire. Very, very swank. Not that you would expect to be in communication with a corpse on Skid Row, some 20 odd apartments, though it's going to be a job checking them all. He folded back Ursula's nightgown and began taking off the safety pins. And a rosary. Just what does that prove? Supposing the blackmailer does have his religious moments, how does that give you a lead? Marshall stuck the pins in the cake of soap and went to work deftly on the diaper problem. Ursula decided she was being tickled, and she liked it. Look at the rosary closer. It's nicely carved, probably quite an expensive one. Handwork and good. Aside from that, a 0 on today's recitation, my sweet. You're the clue addict, but on this one you flop badly. How many sets of beads are there? 1, 2, 3, 7. Exactly, and that's all wrong. I've noticed the rosaries that the nuns carry. There should be 5 sets, so there's something strange about this one. And I've got to check up on it. He finished pinning the extra diaper for the nightwear, pulled the baby's gown down, and fastened the drawstring. With Sister Ursula? Uh-huh. Marshall looked not too happy. The last time he was mixed up in a case with the Catholic religious clues, the goddamnedest things happened I've never heard of in the history of homicide. Since then, life's been peaceful. Just nice, ordinary, routine, restful murders, and now this rosary crops up. Leona rose. It's been swell having a few minutes resting. Thanks, Terence. And now I've got to finish getting dinner ready. The Duncans will be here any minute. Lieutenant Marshall held his daughter in one arm and put the other around his wife. I love you, he said. Which of us? Both of you. And Terry, too. He jerked his head toward the next room. Is he asleep? Probably not. Leona leaned over and made a face at the baby, who appreciated it. Then she put her lips firmly and warmly against her husband's. I'm lucky, she said. While Leona bustled competently about the kitchen, Terence Marshall assembled whiskey and soda and glasses on a tray. He glanced at the clock and at the door, and then settled down for a moment. With Dudley Fitt's latest volume of translations from Greek anthology, occasionally he referred to his worn volume of original and nodded with pleasure at the translation. It had been agreeable, in the cool walks of Oxford, for Rhodes scholar Marshall to speculate on the possibilities of continuing the scholarly life, the contemplation of chaste and ordered beauty, the strict rigor of infinite flexibility of the scholastic mind. Then had come his chance acquaintance with young Southey and his introduction through Assistant Commissioner Southey to the methodical wonders of Scotland Yard. Here he realized in the police work so damned and scorned by the man in the street was the one perfect career for the individual who combined goodwill, a well-trained mind, and a body which had brought him all American honors. For 2 years running he had been succeeded. Sorry, the lighting is now going. It's interesting that we have people here who are being deleted, but that's okay. That's okay, I don't mind. Well-trained mind and a body which had brought him all American honors for 2 years running, and he had succeeded in career through only by dint of keeping his mind and his goodwill as much under wraps as possible. If any of the boys were to see him now, his eyes coursing over Greek minuscules. Where is my mind? Greek minuscules. and his lips curved in quiet contentment. Nothing but the fear of his athletic prowess could prevent mayhem. The doorbell rang, and he set the Greek anthology beside. "Be there in a minute," Leona called from the kitchen. Lieutenant Marshall opened the door to admit the Duncans. He had met them on the Harrigan case, that case of the 9x9 in which the goddamnedest thing happened, and through which he had met an amazing nun whose name he had given his daughter. And their hesitant and confused romance had been a one note of happiness in the murderous business. 6 months of marriage had changed them. Concha Maria del Concepcion, to give her full name, bestowed on her by her Spanish mother, was no longer a frightened and groping child, but a young woman beginning to feel for the first time sure of her place in life, and Matt Duncan was losing his bitter touchiness and slowly becoming willing to admit that people sometimes did like him and might even mean well by him. "Sorry we're late," Matt said. "Believe it or not, we were waiting for a streetcar." Concha nodded. "And we have been the latest statistics in the coldest corner in Los Angeles to wait on. I'm frozen." "Until you're 21, said Lieutenant Marshall, I am strictly violating the California law by giving you a drink. But that makes it a medicinal. I don't think I'll report myself." Concha handed her host her coat and accepted the highball. "If we only had a car," she murmured. Matt Duncan downed a quick straight. We'll stop that for now. Matt Duncan downed a quick straight one and refilled his glass. "If Stuart likes his novel I'm working on, we'll see what we can be arranged." "Only I don't see," Concha insisted, "why we have to wait for any old novel if you only..." Matt set down his glass. "Look, we're not going into that tonight." "I only said, let it go," Marshall grinned. "Children," he said chidingly. Matt Duncan turned to him. "Terence, I like the touching story of your marriage and proposing to her while she was serving her jail sentence. You were a smart man to marry a woman with no money and of her own." "I don't know about that. I'm certain neither Terry nor Ursula would object too strongly to having a mother who was an heiress." "And it isn't my own," Concha argued. "It's ours now. And why you shouldn't use it to buy a car if you'd wanted to." "Mary?" Matt's voice was quietly grim. Concha shuddered. "You're going to have to shelter me, Lieutenant. He never uses my real name unless he's mad as anything." We will stop for the night for there because it's after 9. But I want for you to... we'll come back next week and read that one. That's okay. Thank you, Lauren Morgan Richards, for putting him in his place. It happens when one is a public figure, and I am, and who knows, perhaps maybe they've stumbled upon me now for something perhaps had come back online, maybe something that they had seen. I'm a public figure, and there was a time when they would try to goad me into responding. They would try to insult their way and make it so that I would react. But that's fine. Okay. Interesting. I can actually view the deleted messages. Why can't I get out of here though? Let's see. Okay. Your head is okay. Interesting. Anyway, I can see them, and it's intriguing. Anyway, I don't mind. Like I said, sometimes when one is a public figure, these people will they get a kick, and I get to the point now where I don't care. I really just don't care anymore. But I appreciate you, Mr. Lauren Morgan Richards, for putting them in their place, because I do care about that, what others are seeing. Um, anyway, my loves, so we will finish this book later. I just wanted to start. I knew that we weren't going to get a chance to actually get into it. I might reread part of it when we get back. Um, because it's such a fabulous story. It really gets really intriguing. I'm not. It's a murder mystery, and we're not going to. I don't want you to lose it. Hello, I'm sorry I did not stop by earlier, but it's nice being read to. That's quite all right, my dear. It is quite all right. Um, I've got a couple of things coming up. I want to start doing a few more Ask Me Anythings. So there's going to be a sign up sheet where if you want your cards read, we'll do that. I'll post it on the Facebook page so that if you would like 3 card reads, I'll do them quickly. I'll do it for an hour. We'll set that up at some time this week. Anyway, my lovelies, I ever so appreciate you. I hope you enjoyed. The Devil's Mansion was interesting, wasn't it? Yeah, it was a very interesting. He wasn't a devil, but he was kind of a devil. He was kind of Rosemary's Baby. It was very interesting. But then, of course, the light turns on and he faints from shock. He dies of shock. I don't know. It was very interesting. Mary Jane says, "See, yes, it was definitely not expected, because was he a dwarf? No, because he had, or a little person, as whichever is more apropos. He had scaly skin and he had hooves. So was he the devil? And could the devil fall asleep? Could be killed by a sudden turning on of electric light? It was rather curious. I don't know. Anyway, my loves, I am going to get ready for bed. We will continue this book next week. We'll read this book. It's a good one. When it gets exciting, it gets exciting. They're just sort of setting up the scene now, and the party scene and the murder that's taken place. Anyway, I love you all, and thank you for your likes, comments, your shares. Thank you for being my friend. I hope you sleep well. Thank you so much. Love you all. Good night. Good night, my loves.